This ordinary woman made a bold decision. She went to the bank and withdrew all her savings. She was determined to experience the life of the rich, but on her first ever flight, she ran into trouble. The man in the row ahead intentionally leaned back and invaded her space. She thought it would be best to let it go and not make a fuss, but the man turned things around and called over the flight attendant, claiming Georgia was picking a fight. The flight attendant didn't bother to understand the situation and simply asked Georgia to give the man more space. In the past, Georgia would have swallowed her anger, but times had changed. She was a rich woman now. There was no way she was going to put up with this. She fired back, saying the airline made economy seats small and narrow just to make more money. Passengers nearby all nodded in agreement, but the head flight attendant wasn't having it. He looked down on this hillbilly acting like a first-class passenger. He even snarked, "If you want comfort, go fly first class. Plenty of space there."
How much is it?
Beg your pardon?
How much for the damn cocoon?
So Georgia did just that. The difference between first class and economy was like night and day. She could eat all the gourmet food she wanted, and the flight attendants treated her with the utmost respect. But Georgia had no idea that this rich lady experience would completely change her life. The plane soon landed in Karlovy Vary. Seeing the long taxi lines outside, Georgia didn't want to waste any time. She noticed an ad nearby and, without hesitation, rented a helicopter. After working hard her whole life, she was finally able to enjoy the beauty of the world. Flying over the breathtaking scenery of Karlovy Vary, she was completely enchanted. In just 30 minutes, she arrived above the 5-star hotel she had booked. The hotel was filled with celebrities and elites, but Georgia's helicopter entrance still stole the show.
All I know, Senator, is that the last time someone arrived by helicopter, it was Elton John. Sir Elton John.
As she descended from the rooftop, the hotel staff rushed over with the utmost respect. For a moment, Georgia felt disoriented. She wasn't used to being treated like royalty. She stepped into the grand lobby and looked around. There were oil tycoons from the Middle East and top professionals from all walks of life. To her surprise, she even spotted the CEO of her old company, vacationing with his assistant. Because her flight had arrived early, her reserved room wasn't ready yet. The front desk informed her that only the presidential suite was available at $4,000 per night.
Did you see me blink?
Everyone gasped at the price, wondering who this mysterious woman really was. Impressed by the hotel's thoughtful service, she tried to tip like a rich person. But she had no idea how much to give, so she handed over the entire wad of cash. The server was stunned and didn't know what to make of her. In the end, he nervously accepted just one bill. Georgia didn't mind. She walked to the window, gazing out at the stunning view, her heart filled with emotion. She thought back to the hard days of her past. Georgia used to work as a sales associate in a department store. She always gave it her all and consistently had the best performance. But over 10 years had passed, and her salary never went up. Her boss kept finding excuses to make her life difficult. Georgia knew this was classic workplace manipulation, but she had no power to fight back. She could only endure it in silence. This work environment left her life in constant financial strain. She always shopped during sales and discounts. She even once dreamed of shopping for free. The car her parents left her sat parked outside, but she couldn't even afford gas. Georgia's greatest hobby was immersing herself in cooking shows. She followed every step the celebrity chefs made, trying to master each recipe. But body image anxiety loomed over her like a shadow. It stood between her and the food she loved. No matter how beautifully she cooked, she didn't dare take a single bite. Instead, she invited the neighbor's kid to try her dishes. She herself would just eat plain vegetables. This anxiety pushed her into deep self-doubt. Even though she had a crush on her coworker, Sean, she didn't dare say anything. She would make excuses to buy kitchenware just to talk to him. She even bought everything he recommended, even if it was useless to her. But as long as she could talk to her crush, she felt happy. Despite her insecurity, Georgia had a big dream. She kept a notebook called Possibilities. It was full of clippings and notes about her dream life, tasting gourmet dishes prepared by star chefs, staying in luxury hotels, falling in love with her dream man Sean, and walking down the aisle together. But fate always has a way of playing cruel tricks. One day, Sean invited her to dinner to thank her for helping his sales. The surprise caught her off guard. As she bent down to pick up the utensils, Sean rushed her to the hospital. At first, everyone thought it was just a minor concussion, but the doctor insisted on a brain scan. sensing something was off. The results were shocking. Georgia had a rare condition, Lance syndrome. To avoid misdiagnosis, the hospital did a second test and brought in specialists. The outcome was the same. There are no early symptoms of the disease, but by the time it's found, it's often too late. Looking at her condition, the doctors gave her a grim prognosis. 3 weeks to live.
What? Like I'm gonna die?
I'm very, very sorry.
But I feel fine. I feel great. I just finished a fat flush and...
Georgia couldn't accept it. What crushed her even more was the insurance company finding every excuse to deny coverage. She now had only 2 choices. Come up with $340,000 for surgery, which might not even work, or give up treatment and wait for death. It was an impossible choice for anyone to make. Georgia opened the notebook where she had written down her dreams. Each page was filled with her hopes for a brighter future. She once believed that if she worked hard enough, those dreams would come true. But now, they felt like distant luxuries she could never reach. After a long night of pain and inner turmoil, Georgia made a life-changing decision. Early the next morning, she stormed into her company. With quick steps and a clear goal, she walked straight into Adamian's office. And then she did something everyone had wanted to do, but never dared. Before she could even speak, Adamian arrogantly picked up a call, clearly not taking her seriously. It wasn't until he finished the call that he finally asked what she wanted.
Yes, I do.
Years of frustration and humiliation suddenly exploded from Georgia's heart. As the top-performing employee in the department store, her outburst caught Adamian off guard. Thinking she was subtly hinting for a raise, he quickly swore to God he'd promote and reward her. But to Georgia now, even God was just a joke.
75 cents more an hour. 75.
As she walked out of the store, Sean ran after her, guilt written all over his face for what had happened. He pulled out 2 tickets and eagerly invited Georgia to a ball game. It was clear.
The game is a couple of weeks away, but I know you're a busy woman, so I wanted to...
Sean had feelings for her too, but Georgia knew her days were numbered. She didn't want to drag Sean into her tragedy. She'd already tasted the bitterness of crushed hope and didn't want to leave him with unrealistic expectations. So she forced herself to say no. Life is cruel like that. You can love someone deeply, yet hide it away because of your own insecurities. And when you're ready to leave the world, just as your heart turns cold, you realize they loved you too. It's like God hides the switch to happiness in a blind spot, only revealing it when you can no longer reach it, just to fill your cup with regret. After that, Georgia went to the bank. Under the shocked stares of the staff, she withdrew every last cent from her accounts. That night, she bought a direct flight to Carla Viveri and booked the most luxurious hotel there. With only a few weeks left to live, she vowed to no longer hold back. She would finally fulfill every wish in her dream notebook. It didn't take long before Georgia arrived at the hotel she had dreamed about. Once she settled in, she launched into full-on experience mode. First, she used an electric wand on her face, supposedly to smooth wrinkles. Then came a hot stone massage, with stones bigger than her head. She even tried a bizarre spa treatment where they hit you with branches. Despite her doubts, Georgia powered through every single treatment. After all that, she had a new idea. Time for a makeover. She walked into a high-end boutique and asked the staff to put together an amazing look for her. The moment Georgia changed into those outfits, her whole aura transformed. She looked either like royalty or a dazzling supermodel. Faced with so many stylish options, Georgia was overwhelmed. She finally chose a slightly understated red evening gown. Wearing her new evening gown, Georgia stepped into the hotel restaurant. The head chef there happened to be her longtime idol, and to savor his culinary skills, Georgia ordered every single specialty dish on the menu, and out of respect, she made no special requests. Her confident ordering style left the server stunned. It even caught the attention of her former company's CEO, Matthew. His assistant, Allison, found out Georgia was also American and staying in the same presidential suite. Matthew was baffled. He had never heard of Georgia before, and no wealthy person would ever order like that. Matthew and his circle always made ridiculous requests just to show off their refined taste. What they didn't know was that chefs hate that kind of behavior, especially a renowned chef like Didier, who absolutely hated it when people altered his menu.
No butter, no cream, no whips, no dairy, no fat. Eh, merde! Why do they bother to eat? Next time, stick this in my neck.
But Matthew didn't care. To To impress Senator Dillings and build his business empire, he even asked Didier to serve them personally. When Didier finally entered the dining room, he shocked everyone by sitting next to Georgia. He was impressed by the dishes she chose. She clearly understood his cuisine. The more they talked, the more they liked each other, which infuriated Matthew. He felt like Georgia was targeting him specifically. To make things worse, Senator Dillings also took a liking to Georgia. After the meal, Georgia headed to the hot spring. Dillings secretly followed her. Georgia wasn't interested and bluntly admitted she was just a poor woman. But her honesty and self-deprecating humor only made Dillings more intrigued. He became convinced she was hiding a mysterious identity. Meanwhile, Matthew happened to witness it all, and it only fueled his suspicions. He was now certain Georgia was an undercover business spy sent by a competitor. He and Allison returned to the suite to discuss strategy. But once they stepped into the enclosed elevator, the tension turned romantic, and they ended up kissing. But the next moment...
There's no need. Everybody knows Matthew Cragen, the man for whom enough is never enough.
Matthew's frustration exploded again. He swore to uncover Georgia's true identity. What he didn't know was that Georgia had once been an employee at his own company. The next day, Georgia went to the ski resort looking for a thrill. The instructor told her that courage was the key to skiing. For Georgia, that was no problem. After a few tumbles, she quickly got the hang of skiing, picking up more and more speed. Then, in a moment of carelessness, Georgia lost control and shot down the slope like an arrow released from a bow. Coincidentally, Matthew was there with Dillings for a ski outing. Seeing Georgia whiz past screaming, Matthew muttered to himself that she was here to ruin things again. In order to save face in front of Dillings, he immediately gave chase. When he caught up to her, he challenged her to a ski race. But Georgia had no time for games. She tried to use Matthew to stop herself, but accidentally knocked him over, sending him crashing into the snow. Matthew was livid and chased after her to argue, but the next second both of them skidded off the course and plowed straight into the crowd. Luckily, Georgia landed perfectly thanks to beginner's luck. Matthew not so much. He once again made a fool of himself in front of everyone. In order to get rid of the thorn in his side, Matthew ordered Allison to keep a close eye on Georgia and find out which rival company had sent her. The next day, Georgia was enjoying a massage when Allison followed her in, but the masseuse was a little too strong, and Allison immediately started yelling. Georgia couldn't stand it anymore. They were all just working-class people struggling to make a living, so she stood up for the masseuse.
I don't like the way you're talking to that woman.
I'm sorry if I disturbed you, Ms. Bird. She was hurting me, though.
I don't care. You don't talk to working people that way. At least this poor lady trying to work it out of you. Don't take it out on Brigitte.
Allison was left speechless and felt a twinge of guilt. Later, she approached Georgia for a chat. She admitted she didn't have many options in life, and with no real skills, she had to rely on her looks to get by. She even foolishly believed Matthew would divorce his wife and marry her. Georgia told her not to be naive.
They ain't leaving their wives? Yeah, you just need to leave him.
It's not that easy. If I leave him, I'll have to quit my job. What am I gonna do? I didn't finish school.
Well, then you go back to school.
Whether that heart-to-heart changed Allison is hard to say, but after that, she clearly stopped being so obedient to Matthew. That evening, Dillings invited Georgia to dinner again. Matthew was clearly annoyed, but because of Dillings' status, he had no choice but to stay silent. Then, unexpectedly, a server came to inform Georgia that the chef had prepared a special dinner just for her. Georgia politely invited Dillings to join, and thanks to her, everyone got to enjoy the feast. Everyone except Matthew, who sat alone. Everyone was drawn to Georgia's unique charm. Left with no choice, Matthew awkwardly joined the group and invited the senators to visit his glass factory the next day. But when the group heard Georgia's plan to visit the dam for a flying experience, they were instantly intrigued by the bold idea. Dillings even canceled his previous plans just to go with her. Matthew finally snapped. He confronted Georgia and made his position clear.
But I'm not going there to watch.
His words were nothing short of a challenge, but when they actually stood at the edge of the dam, Matthew's legs turned to jelly, and he could barely stay on his feet. Georgia took a deep breath and jumped without hesitation. She thought to herself, with so little time left, even if something went wrong, it was better to die here than on an operating table. Everyone was stunned by Georgia's fearlessness in the face of death. She landed safely at the designated spot. After the dam flight, Georgia became the group's hero, the one everyone admired and adored. In the days that followed, all those new and wild experiences helped Georgia find inner peace. She was finally able to face the idea of death calmly. Though there were still people and moments she couldn't let go of, time was running out. Georgia wrote a farewell letter, hoping to leave something behind for her family and friends. That night, she dressed to the nines and went to the casino. Maybe it was fate smiling on her, but she placed the same bet 3 times in a row and won every time. Everyone around her followed suit and made big money. Allison even won $100,000. Only Matthew lost badly, losing millions to Georgia. It felt like fate was finally paying her back for all those years he had exploited her at the company. While the others were still celebrating, hotel manager Ms. Gunther quietly entered Georgia's room. It turned out that Matthew had bribed her the day before, asking her to dig into Georgia's background. Ms. Gunther searched around and found Georgia's old employee badge. That's when she realized Georgia was just a department store saleswoman. But then she discovered Georgia's farewell letter.
If you're reading this letter, my disease has run its course. Enclosed is some money for my burial. I would like to be cremated. Spent my whole life in a box. I don't want to be buried in one.
She was deeply moved by Georgia's love for life and her calm acceptance of death. When Georgia returned, a guilt-ridden Ms. Gunther hugged her tightly. Overwhelmed with guilt, she confessed everything, Matthew's bribery and her role in the investigation. She sincerely asked for forgiveness, but Georgia wasn't angry. In fact, she was almost relieved to have someone else know her secret. Ms. Gunther gently asked her a question.
Why are you here with these terrible people? You should be with people you love.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that myself. One in particular. It's time I go home and find him.
The next day, Georgia began her journey home, but an avalanche blocked the road. It seemed fate was playing tricks on her again, crushing her hope of seeing Sean one last time. What she didn't know was that, on the other side of the snow, Sean was also stuck because of the avalanche. Georgia returned to her room and changed into her evening gown. She had made peace with it all. Even if she couldn't see Sean again, she no longer felt regret. After all, life is rarely perfect. What she didn't know was that fate hadn't stopped moving. Just as Georgia returned to the banquet, Matthew stirred up trouble. Using company resources, he had uncovered Georgia's real identity. Right in front of the senators, he publicly revealed that Georgia wasn't a wealthy socialite, but a kitchenware saleswoman earning just $30,000 a year. Caught off guard by the sudden attack, Georgia Rose calmly and gracefully admitted she was an ordinary employee at Matthew's company. Didier tried to come to her defense, but Matthew rudely cut him off and insisted Georgia explain everything.
I didn't come here to give anybody the wrong impression about me. I just came here to blow every last cent of my money. You see, I'm gonna die.
Georgia, please.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's all right. Never in my life did I think I would end up in such a beautiful place, doing so many incredible things. I'm sorry if I was maybe a little too honest with you, but I wasted too much of my life being quiet.
Georgia's heartfelt response earned the respect of everyone in the room. They all agreed. It was the most unforgettable Christmas they'd ever had. Matthew, on the other hand, became the target of public outrage. One by one, the senators got up and left. Even Allison made a firm decision to walk away from the man who had wasted 6 years of her life. As the Christmas countdown began, the crowd cheered and celebrated the new year. Only Matthew sat alone, drowning his frustration in silence. He had lost completely. In his despair, Matthew stumbled up to the rooftop. The commotion alarmed the entire hotel. When Georgia heard what had happened, she rushed to the rooftop and quietly sat beside him.
A guy like you has all the money and time in the world to turn things around for himself, you know? So just stop whining and get with it.
Can't believe I had somebody like you working for me all this time.
After a long conversation, Georgia managed to talk him out of ending his life. Matthew then asked about her love life. Georgia gave a sad smile and admitted that there was someone she liked, a coworker from the company. But with so little time left to live, she hadn't had the courage to tell Sean how she felt. Just then, a familiar voice called out.
Georgia!
Sean, what you doing here?
Well, I found out, about the Lampington's disease, and I up and quit my job. Besides, after you quit, I didn't feel like I had a reason to be there. I have feelings for you, whether it's for 5 minutes here on this ledge or 50 years.
Georgia felt both joy and inner conflict. Knowing she didn't have much time left, she couldn't help but sigh at the unfairness of fate. At that very moment, Ms. Gunther burst onto the rooftop with stunning news. She had a fax from the doctor. Georgia had never been terminally ill. A malfunction at the hospital had caused a misdiagnosis. Georgia was in complete disbelief. Fate had played a huge joke on her. It not only restored her health, but also brought her love. This dreamlike journey had made her the true winner of her own story. Later, Georgia and Sean returned to their hometown and opened a restaurant of their own. On opening day, Georgia, now the head chef in training, was full of energy and passion. Didier also came to support them, and many other friends came to celebrate as well. The atmosphere was vibrant and full of joy. Life is like a vast and boundless ocean, full of crashing waves. Only those with strong willpower can reach the distant shore. Along the journey, regrets and disappointments are inevitable. When you cry over missing the sun, don't let that sadness make you miss the shining stars as well. Believe that every setback is a lesson in growth and every challenge is a chance to transform. May we all carry fearless courage and unwavering faith, bravely sailing through the ocean of life, and ultimately harvesting our own brilliance and happiness.